Quote, "In the factory, we make cosmetics. In the drugstore, we sell hope." Revlon founder Charles Rusin. For a more damaging example, several middle-aged single friends of mine found someone online who seemed like a great match. Within a year of 2 weddings and 1 engagement, unfortunately reality was discovered by each person who failed to think critically and relied upon hope instead. These incredible people my friends each found were no longer incredible. In fact, they were a heartbreaking disappointment with incredible baggage that was never explored well enough. These are bright people. Where did they go wrong? What happens to critical thinking when we want something to work out so much? Part denial, part hope, and part throwing ourselves to the wind. Our decision-making gets progressively worse. Hope is bad for decisions. Depression. Everyone gets depressed at one time or another. The most insidious factor enabling the decisionator's ability to hurt our decision-making is depression. I'm not a doctor, but I've been depressed during times of chronic extended stress, and I decided to find out why. You can ask your doctor and search the internet for more information, but I believe it's important for you to clearly understand today how brain chemicals can affect decision-making. Neurotransmitters are the brain chemicals that communicate information throughout our brain and body. They relay signals between nerve cells called neurons. The brain uses neurotransmitters to tell your heart to beat, your lungs to breathe, and your stomach to digest. They can also affect mood, sleep, concentration, and weight, and can cause adverse symptoms when they are out of balance. Neurotransmitter levels can be depleted in many ways. As a matter of fact, it is estimated that 86% of Americans have suboptimal neurotransmitter levels. There are 3 key balance brain neurotransmitters that work in concert to significantly impact how we feel and how we react to people and decisions: dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. We are always naturally producing these chemicals for our brain to use. These chemicals are the target of nearly all antidepressive medications, with the goal of elevating these chemicals to normal levels. However, some people are naturally low on these chemicals and, more commonly, we humans do things to alter these chemical levels. Certain factors bring down the levels of these chemicals: chronic stress, anxiety, illness, genetics, lack of sleep, lack of exercise, neurotoxins, poor diet, drug alcohol abuse, etc. I believe any human working hard to get somewhere comes up against these factors at one time or another and experiences a depression of these essential brain neurotransmitters. These are the low moments. For more detail on these 3 chemicals and the decision-making impact they bring, you can read the Digging Deeper section at the end of this chapter. I want to emphasize that the decisionator often takes the stage when these chemicals are depressed. Clinical depression is not just about attitude, perspective, or wanting things to be different. It is a chemical imbalance issue, too. You either have enough of a chemical or you don't. If you're low, you are absorbing more than you are producing, and that is where the problem begins for a clear decision. The good news. The above 3 neurotransmitter levels in our brain can be raised naturally. If that doesn't work, our doctor can help us with one or all of them. It's only chemistry. Most important to keep in mind, we are trying to put our brain in the best position to make a decision, and we cannot leave the back door open for the decisionator to sneak in and screw up our results. Naturally Wrong, Part 3, Ignoring the Consequences. Sometimes we don't know if we have a valid why, we just want to enjoy life without thinking so hard. Even with a clear mind, not the decisionator, we still can't be sure whether we should choose option A or B. In these times, we must consider the possible consequences of all options. It is an easy exercise. If I do A, the possible consequences are blank. If I do B, the consequences are blank. If I do nothing, the consequences are blank. Our parents told us about consequences while growing up, of course. Why are we told not to take candy from strangers, play in the street, hang out with the wrong people, stay out too late, spend money we didn't have? It is and was the consequences they were thinking about on our behalf. For fun, you can use a simple test to see how you tend to consider consequences today. As a driver, how low do you let the fuel gauge dip toward empty before filling up? How low do you go? For me, I know I can take the fuel level down to the last 10 miles, and I do that often. The consequences of being late and calling AAA are acceptable to me. On the other hand, my wife gets nervous under a 4th tank of gas, and her car is usually filled up. For her, the consequences feel more significant than for me. Which type are you? It's a personal judgment about tolerance, and neither is wrong. It's just how we are built. If you are sensitive to consequences, you must make choices that will only produce possible consequences you can tolerate. Consequences of our decisions really matter. Becoming an expert on calculating the possible consequences of any choice can keep you on track for the life you want. These ever-important consequences come in a few types. Let's dig deeper to make better decisions with common sense. Mild consequences. Consequences that stop and slow progress. The least damaging consequences are those that only slow us down or stop us temporarily, like walking in deep snow. They create a pause, but do not take us off our expected progress track. Consequences that stop or slow progress can require saying, "I'm sorry," trying again, getting assistance, regrouping, redoing, or reselling. We can fix it and move on, like changing a flat tire and continuing on our road trip. We can still achieve the goal in mind because we've just paused briefly. Medium consequences. Consequences that require cleanup. Have you ever carried so many dishes or glasses to or from the dining table that others were alarmed? "I've got it," you say confidently. However, you internally decide that you are okay with the possible cleanup consequences. If you drop these breakable items, a mop and broom can tidy up in 15 minutes. More significant are the consequences that require us to stop and dedicate additional effort to cleaning up a mess in our lives. Unintended cleanups can derail our locomotive off the train track of life. Consequences that require cleanup can include quitting anything, breaking up, dissolving a partnership, financial losses, moving, reputation repair, lost trust, lost love, and hurting your loved ones. I rarely make a decision that could bring significant cleanup consequences because big cleanup efforts can kill all my momentum for an unknown amount of time. However, some cleanups are a natural part of moving on and involve healing and readjustment. In those cases, we move into those consequences intentionally and purposely as part of a decision to take the pain and move forward in this life. Severe consequences. Consequences that are permanent. Alternatively, the most damaging consequences are those that force change upon us and remove options and flexibility from our future. These are not always horrible and can sometimes have beautiful stories that include overcoming adversity, but they definitely force us down a path we would not have chosen first. Permanent consequence examples can include early pregnancy, bankruptcy, disability, criminal conviction, overdose, accidents, injuries, and breaking someone's heart. I've seen people make poor choices on big decisions in their 20s and 30s, and they are dealing with the permanent consequences of those decisions their whole lives. Their potential was cut short, and they had to adjust their dreams downward due to permanent consequences. They talk about their regrets in terms of permanent consequences. They think about, what if? Deciding with consequences in mind, can I handle it? So when I'm making decisions and I'm not sure about the proper choice, even after considering why and all the options with a clear mind, I think about the consequences. The question to ask is, if the decision turns out badly, can I accept the possible consequences? How much risk can I handle? In terms of consequences, what is my exposure in this decision? Sometimes the possible consequences of a potential choice are too large to handle. For me, I don't do things that have consequences I could not personally stand. I would kick myself forever. In the cost-benefit analysis of consequences at a fork in the road, a choice is a loser when it has more potential costs than potential benefits, especially when the consequences are severe and permanent. Let's look at some life examples of consequences. Asking a romantic interest for a date. Is a possible rejection worth a possible yes? Of course. Romantics must be brave to make the world go round. Running across the street while dodging traffic. Is the benefit worth the potential cost? Obviously not. We call these actions foolish. Quitting a job and starting a business. If the business fails, can I get another job? Can my family survive the possible disruption? If so, then what is stopping you? Buying a home or auto at the top end of our price range. If I cannot make the payments at any point, am I okay with losing it? Staying partner with someone who has hurt you. If things do not improve, can I leave at any time? Can I accept being hurt again? Having unprotected sex. Am I ready to start a family? Am I prepared to make a life-death decision for an unborn child? Am I willing to catch an STD? And finally, not doing something when I had the chance. Will I regret forever not trying? How painful will it be to kick myself because I didn't at least try? Large consequence juggling. I have never been able to function well while juggling multiple large consequence risks, and I don't advise anyone to do so. This means that you have made more than one decision that could go bad and deliver large consequences. If 2 or 3 of these break down at the same time, we can be sucked into a tornado of regret and cleanup work. It can ruin us. Chronic gamblers and people with addictions do this frequently because their disease overwhelms their ability to correctly evaluate consequences. I don't advise going for broke because while the rewards could be great, we can live without that possibility. On the other hand, we cannot always live well with multiple bad decision consequences crashing to earth. Another cost of consequence juggling: chronic stress. When we have one potential consequence mess, we can watch it, be prepared for it, and if it happens, deal with it capably. However, if we have more than one, our instincts kick in and our natural anxiety level goes way up, adding chronic stress to our body that doesn't go away until the threat is over. Chronic stress damages our health and puts a lot of pressure on us that we cannot control. I have lived with this in business and it feels ugly. In my situation years ago, a struggling business combined with an active lawsuit and the needs of my young family created my resolve to write this chapter. Multiple active, large, possible negative consequences create an instinctive threat condition. The threat is there when you are awake, and it's there during your sleep. We cannot deny our instincts, as they are there to protect us. When instincts are triggering anxiety over possible bad outcomes, they are telling us to find a way to stop juggling more than one possible bad consequence at a time, clawing our way to something that is manageable. As my parental instincts tell me to not let my child play in the middle of the street, there are limits to what consequences I'm willing to accept if they should happen. As a husband and father, I will take risks that can impact me, but I will not take risks that could severely impact people I love. However, I take business risks every year that could significantly alter our standard of living. But I won't lead my closest family members and friends into a crash by juggling multiple possible consequences. I can tolerate losing money, but I will not tolerate having to start over. The consideration of consequences in this way keeps me from being stupid and hurting others and myself. Thus, I don't gamble with more than fun money, I don't risk my health, I don't carry debt I cannot repay, and I work in whatever manner it takes to make enough money to meet the needs of today and the near future. There will always be college loans, car wreck deductibles, kids' braces, medical bills, and you name it, many other needs. I won't risk being unable to do what is necessary. Therefore, when I make my decisions and I'm considering consequences, the consequences I cannot accept will remove those choices as options for me. Sometimes that removes all the options and there is no decision to make. Using consequences as a shortcut. When the correct choice is not clear due to our why, which is a lack of an overriding goal that supports the option, we can use consequences as a shortcut to the right answer. When you think about the possible consequences for each option you could choose, figuring out the consequence category you are possibly choosing: progress slowing, which is mild, cleanup, which is medium, or permanent, which is severe consequences. The category should tell you how much thought this decision deserves. Choosing the option with the most acceptable consequences is the best action until you define a goal in this area. Pausing to at least consider consequences and their severity will prevent most extraordinarily stupid decisions, in my experience. Breaking the bad decision addiction. When presented with a decision, a fork in the road, an opportunity you can take or not take, something you can pursue or leave behind, perform this 3-step review. 1. Do I have a valid why in the choice I'm about to make? 2. Is my mind thinking clearly, or am I the decisionator? And 3. Are the consequences of failure acceptable? The answer to question number 1, your why, is hopefully yes, as you can link the choice you're making to a goal. If so, great. That's big support for this choice. If you aren't sure, the next 2 questions are even more important. Question number 2 needs you to be honest about your state of mind as you make the decision. Is your mind clear and unaffected by the traits of the decisionator? If not, you must neutralize why you are the decisionator before making a clear-headed decision. Finally, for the option you prefer, Question number 3 needs to know if you are aware of the possible consequences and can accept them. The goal is yes, yes, and yes in this series of questions. We have honored our objectives, cleared our mind, and examined the hard facts in order to decide. Can you see your decision-making tools starting to come together? I assure you that you are already thinking differently about decisions. Now that we know how and why we make poor decisions, we are that much more empowered to deal with the feelings and ramifications of a bad decision, which we will discuss in the next chapters. What happens when we choose poorly? As promised, digging deeper on our neurotransmitters. Dopamine is our main focus neurotransmitter. When dopamine is either elevated or low, we can have focus issues, such as not remembering where we put our keys, forgetting what a paragraph said when we just finished reading it, or simply daydreaming and not being able to stay on task. Dopamine is also responsible for our drive or our desire to get things done, our motivation. Dopamine stimulates happiness and excitability and can improve your overall contentedness. Dopamine is the chemical in the brain triggered by several drugs, including caffeine, cocaine, and alcohol, to create the sensation of happiness. Essentially, we eat, drink, and ingest chemicals as urges to spike our dopamine levels. When dopamine is low, we will self-medicate by doing or ingesting whatever makes us feel better chemically. So, late-night ice cream is more than ice cream. Our brains are crafty in knowing what we can do to raise dopamine levels, oftentimes in a way that is harmful in the long term. For decision-making, low dopamine makes us vulnerable to choosing what feels good over what is good for our success plan. Low dopamine trumps all whys until it is satisfied. Thus, a success definition of fit in, trim, and healthy will have a low probability when we are self-medicating with food, drink, and behavior that brings the opposite in the short term. If you examine your impulsive behavior like I have, a majority of it is simply satisfying a dopamine fix for the moment. To make good decisions, dopamine levels cannot be wanting. Serotonin, affectionately called the feel-good neurotransmitter, provides an overall feeling of well-being. Adequate amounts of serotonin are necessary for a stable mood and the ability to remain calm. Serotonin levels can affect how we view, give, and receive love and intimacy. Caffeine can cause a depletion of serotonin over time. Serotonin also regulates many other processes such as carbohydrate cravings, sleep cycles, pain control, appropriate digestion, and immune system function. For decision-making, low serotonin levels make us vulnerable to being the decisionator. Serotonin greatly affects how we react to all the above, being angry, hurried, or rejected, hits to our pride, or bruises to our ego. Serotonin is significant in our sleep quality, and that impacts our fatigue levels. So low serotonin greatly enables the decisionator. What a discovery! Normal serotonin levels are a good decision's foundation. Norepinephrine affects part of the brain where attention and responses are controlled. Norepinephrine affects heart rate, triggers the release of glucose from energy stores, and increases blood flow to skeletal muscle. It increases the brain's oxygen supply. A sudden rapid rise in norepinephrine causes panic attacks. A somewhat high level makes you happy, and a really high level makes you euphoric. Since norepinephrine plays a role in regulating our hunger and eating responses, individuals with low norepinephrine may experience greater levels of hunger and appetite and weight gain. For decision-making, norepinephrine affects us in many ways. Low levels of norepinephrine bog us down, leaving us with a significant reduction in both energy and motivation, resulting in a depressed, take-no-action feeling that doesn't go away. So, low norepinephrine tends to make doing nothing the default choice among our options. We are mindful of our success goals, yet we don't have the means to get up and get going. We are the decisionator when we fail to act. Thus, we can slam the door on the decisionator when we recognize low norepinephrine and deal with it.